Hello Glamour Ghouls, and welcome back! If you are new here, my name is Midge Munster, and on this channel we do all things campy, kooky, glamorous, and spooky. First things first today, happy October! I am so excited that it is finally here. I am feeling the fall feelings. I'm so excited. I have so much fun, spooky content planned for this month coming your way. And with that being said, be sure to subscribe to the channel before you leave today if you're not already. I have so many exciting things coming your way and you're not going to want to miss a single moment. As the title of this video suggests, today I wanted to do something a little bit different than what we normally do here on the channel, especially because I feel like this was a major historical event for all of us in the spooky community and I couldn't let it go like unmarked. As many of you probably know, Hocus Pocus 2 released on Disney Plus this past weekend, and of course I watched it the first day that it was available, and so I wanted to take a little time today and talk about my honest thoughts about the movie, just talk about how I felt about it and what things I liked, what things I didn't like. We are going to take a little moment up front here and talk generally about it, so if you haven't seen the movie, feel free to hang around for a couple minutes. I will let you know at what point in this video we're going to start talking spoilers. So let's start right up front. To be frank with you, when they announced this movie, I was not excited about it. I was really worried. I just think this is one of those classic Halloween, like beloved films that you just don't touch. I of course was really excited that they had the original 3, the witches, available to do the film. There's no way you could do it at all without Bette, Sarah, and Kathy. So I was thrilled that they were bringing them back. Anytime I get to see Bette Midler perform is like a great frickin' day in my book. So I knew I was gonna watch it regardless, but I didn't have high hopes. And for those of you who follow me over on Instagram and saw my review of the new Munsters movie, I was not feeling confident after watching that a few days prior. Again, there are just some things that I think shouldn't be touched, and I was not feeling good about sequels or remakes after the Munsters movie. So I went into this film prepared to not like it, to be quite honest with you. But my general review, what I will say, is that actually, I loved this movie. I was shocked by how much I loved it. I thought maybe at best I would like some of it. Now, don't get me wrong, it's definitely not perfect, and there were things about it that I could have done without, and we'll get into that a bit when we get into our spoilers section. But overall, in my opinion, this movie is 100% worth watching, and I think even the hardcore Hocus Pocus fans will love this movie. Okay, so now I'm going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory because I want to talk first about the casting of this film, and there will be some very mild spoilers of the first scene of the movie. This first scene was so good. I loved that they started the film the same way they started the first movie, with kind of the flyover of Old Salem. And let's talk about this casting of these 3 young girls as Winifred and her sisters as children. These little girls were so good. They were so good. They had the mannerisms down, the attitudes down. The girl playing Mary had like her little like side smile down perfectly. Winifred was cracking me up. She was so good. This little girl is gonna have a career ahead of her. I don't know if she's been in things before now. I don't recall ever seeing her before, but wow, if this is her first performance in something like this scale, what a debut. She stole the show for me. So funny. And while we're on the topic of this first scene, I think setting up the backstory of the Sanderson sisters was a brilliant way to start this film. I feel like people will have varying opinions on this, but I really liked that this opening made them sympathetic characters, because whether or not you love them or love to hate them, like, you love the Sanderson sisters. Like, we love them. They're hilarious, they're fun, they're campy, and so it was really cool to get this backstory about kind of what made them who they are. We get the tiniest little bit of Billy Butcherson up front too, which I was obsessed with. Billy is probably my favorite character in Hocus Pocus, and so it was really fun to get that little like kernel right up front. But overall, loved this opening scene, loved the casting of the girls. So staying in the casting vein, we meet our protagonist here pretty quickly, Becca, played by Whitney Peak, and her friends, Izzy, played by Belissa Escobedo, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and Cassie, played by Lilia Buckingham. I thought these girls were so good. I loved the addition of these new characters. It's really hard to work new characters into a beloved franchise like this, and I thought these characters were really likable, but also complex and interesting. We also had some awesome casting choices among the adults. I was so excited to see Tony Hale. I think Tony Hale is one of the funniest people. I loved him in Veep, and he's playing our mayor of the town, Trask, and this was so funny. I love him, and I was so excited to see him in something. I was also really excited to see Sam Richardson as Gilbert. I feel like I haven't seen him in anything for a while. Very specifically, I know him as Dunstan in New Girl, but I've always thought his delivery is just really funny and like earnest, and I thought his whole motivation through this film was really like interesting and strange, and I really liked his character. Oh hey, this is me from editing land. I also wanted to say, because I forgot to say it in here, that we got to see Cornbread the Snack Jeté, Ginger Minge, and Kamara Hall also in this movie. We got to see some drag representation, and I loved seeing that. I had to give that a quick shout out because I'm a huge Cornbread and Ginger Minge fan, and so it was really cool to see them in this, and I got really excited when they came on screen. So that's all. Back as you were. And then, of course, the original three, Bette Midler, Kathy Najimy, and Sarah Jessica Parker. What a dynamic trio. I could not have been more thrilled to see them all back on screen again. We'll get a bit more into their performances in the spoilers section, but overall, it was just so good to see them all together again, and I thought they all did a really great job. Okay, so if you have not seen the movie yet, go and watch it now. This is where we're going to start to get into like major spoilers for the film, so if you don't want to know any of the major plot points, now's the time to stop the video and go watch the movie and come back to me when you're done. So now I want to get a little bit into things I liked, things I didn't like so much, things I didn't really understand. And I've tried to break these out a little bit by category, at least a little bit, to help this kind of move cohesively. So the first thing I want to talk about is the music in the film. This was something I didn't like as much about the movie. The soundtrack as a whole was just more like updated, and I understand why. Like, this is Hocus Pocus for this generation, and so I understand having a different type of feel musically. But sadly, one of the things I was most excited about was how they were going to incorporate music into the film, especially like how the witches might sing again, a la I Put a Spell on You. And the very first thing we see once the witches are brought back is them breaking into song, and I really didn't think this fit the tone of the moment at all. I didn't like this original The Witches Are Back song that they were singing. I just thought it was kind of corny and cheesy, and not in a way that fits into the Hocus Pocus world, corny cheesy. I saw somebody else online articulate this really well, that like the singing in the first movie felt earned. Like, it fit really well into the plot, and in the moment it felt natural and like it should be happening. In this movie, when they show up and they just start singing out of nowhere, it felt very forced. And I felt like I was just kind of having a moment of like, what's happening? Why is this why are they singing? So I didn't love that. And then we get a musical number very much in the same vein as the first movie later on in the film, when they're at this festival and they're trying to find the mayor. They cast a spell on the audience through song. I didn't love the explanation of that. Like, they took a moment and explained what they were going to do, which I thought was kind of silly. Overall, I felt like that was kind of a point throughout the movie, that everything was a little over-explained, where in the first film, the audience is trusted with the like intelligence to infer what's happening with the witches. So overall, I felt like some aspects of this were a little bit, what's the word I want to say? Like, infantilized a little bit. Like, it was geared towards a younger audience maybe, and so it was explaining more to like help kids understand what was happening. But all I'm saying is, I saw Hocus Pocus 1 when I was a baby and I knew what was happening. I think we can trust kids to understand things a lot better than we think they can. We don't have to explain everything to them. But the musical number in question ends up being the song One Way or Another by Blondie, and I didn't love that choice. I really didn't. I understand how the lyrics were like fitting for the moment, but it just kind of seemed meh. Like a meh choice to me. I wish that it had been a like spookier song, and it doesn't have to be like something really Halloween specific. And I know that song can be kind of creepy, like it's like, I'm gonna get you. But this kind of leads into another point I have about the movie in general that we'll get to in just a second. One thing before I move on, though, that I do want to point out, I was really excited. The opening song of this movie, when we first come into present day, is a song called Skeleton Sam. And this is actually a song by Lovecraft, who is a fellow like Halloween community friend. We all had the pleasure of meeting Lovecraft at Midsummer Scream this year. And so that was really, really cool to see someone kind of like one of our own from the community having a song in this really like big film event of the year. That was really, really cool. And I really liked the song. That was a lot of fun. So go stream some Lovecraft music. They're doing great stuff. So back to this kind of leading thread from the One Way or Another musical number. When I said I wish it had been more spooky. This was an overarching theme for me for the whole movie. That just generally I wished the film had been spookier. And not like scary necessarily, though I will say the first movie has some legitimately scary moments, and you are like, especially if you're a kid, like you are a little afraid of the witches. And I think this movie made them less scary and more campy, which was fun, but also I just wish overall it had been a little more autumnal and a little more Halloween-y. I missed the like night shots of Salem streets and all the houses decorated for Halloween. I just felt like it wasn't quite as cozy and fall-esque as the first film. It didn't take that much away from the movie, but I do wish overall there had been a little bit more of that. What I will say is that I did notice pretty early on, like the first couple scenes, that they were definitely putting some kind of filter on the lens or over the film that made it look a little bit more like it was filmed in the 90s. I can't explain what this is, and if anybody else noticed it, let me know in the comments below. But I very specifically noticed it in the first scene in the magic shop, that it had that kind of like yellowy hazy filter over it that looked a lot like the first film. And that was cool, and I felt very like cozy about that. So I was glad that they did that. I don't know even if I'm right, and that maybe I tricked my brain into thinking that was happening, but I thought I noticed it, and I thought it was a great detail. And then my last little complaint before we get into the many, many things that I loved about this movie was, why was Billy suddenly Cockney? Was anyone else confused? Billy Butcherson, first of all, played by the incomparable Doug Jones. Doug Jones is horror royalty. He is acting royalty. I don't think that there is anyone more talented or fun or funny or capable of doing these kinds of roles. He is just so great. So I'm definitely not trying to shit on Doug Jones. I love him. I think he can do no wrong. However, I was deeply confused by this weird, like, Cockney South London vocal choice that he suddenly had for Billy Butcherson. Maybe I'm crazy, but I watched the first movie right before I watched the second movie too, so I don't think I'm misremembering how Billy spoke. He had kind of like a gruffness, but it wasn't like, "Hello, governor." I just was really, really confused. And it made me not like Billy as much, which was a bummer. Like, I think it just made Billy a little more like fumbly bumbly and like kind of, I don't know, silly. And again, I think this ties into the like making him less scary or something. I don't know. It just, again, it seemed like it was maybe geared towards younger children. But I grew up with Billy Butcherson, and look how I turned out. I'm fine. Kind of. So if anyone else noticed this, and which I'm sure you did, I feel like everyone had to have noticed this. If you have any thoughts or explanations as to what happened with Billy's voice, let me know in the comments because I'm deeply confused by it. Okay, we got the negative out of the way. And even, like I said, those things aren't even that negative. Like overall, I didn't think they took that much away from the movie. It was just things that I personally would have liked to have maybe seen improved upon as to make this like the perfect sequel. But now let's talk about the things that I loved about this movie. Again, the witches. Can we talk about Bette Midler for a second? Can we all get together, gather for a second, grab a cocktail, grab a cup of coffee, let's all have a seat and talk about Bette freaking Midler. This woman is 77 years old. And I thought she played this with as much energy, if not more, than she did 30 years ago. It was incredible to see her reprise this role and to do it with such energy and vigor and excitement. I loved it. I loved seeing her. It made me very emotional. And we'll talk... I'm not gonna cry. Why am I crying? We'll talk more about the end of this movie here in just a bit, but Bette put everything she had into this, and I lived for it. I also thought Kathy Najimy was hilarious, per usual. Her delivery is just always spot on, and I loved seeing these kind of updated versions of Mary and Sarah who were like in on the fact that like Winnie doesn't treat them the best. Like they were kind of gaining a little bit of consciousness in themselves that like, you can't talk to me like that energy. I will say, I think I'm gonna get some hate for this. I thought SJP was trying a little too hard for my liking. It kind of seemed like she was playing a caricature of Sarah, like maybe she didn't know quite how to access that same place anymore, which is also valid because she's 30 years older. And I still loved it, but it didn't feel as authentic to the first film as I thought Bette and Kathy's performances did. I also think what I loved about this movie was that even though to me it's never going to be the original, I think they could have done everything perfectly and it still wouldn't have been as good as Hocus Pocus. That magic happened one time and I don't think you can recreate it. However, what made this movie really, really good to me was to see how much care for the original and how much love for the source material was put into this film. It didn't feel like they had rushed production or pushed a script through just to do something. It felt like they really took care with it. And that was shown in so many ways, but especially through amazing little Easter eggs hidden, just littered throughout the entire film. You could catch little things here and there. And I will say I've only watched it once. I'm already ready to watch it again. But even on my first watch through, I caught probably 10 things that were really small details. And I know there's probably 50 more that I haven't even noticed yet. One of my favorite ones I picked up on was in the crowd scene where they're doing the musical number and the audience is like hunting down the mayor. You get like a 1-second glimpse of a woman in the crowd wearing the Mom's Madonna costume from the first movie. I thought that was really funny. Also at the end of the film, the 3 girls are wearing really subtle homages to the witches. I thought the costume design for this was brilliant overall. Like we have Becca who has really beautiful natural hair, so her hair's very big and curly like Winifred's and she's wearing a green jacket, and Izzy has like a little side pony thing that kind of mimics Mary's hair shape and she's wearing like a red sweater and plaid pants, and Cassie has her long blonde hair and is wearing like kind of a pink tie-dye. So it was really, really subtle, but they were wearing these 3 outfits that kind of made them look like the Sanderson sisters, and I thought that was a really cool detail that kind of showed how they were gonna, carry on this next generation. I thought that was really cool. And of course, my absolute favorite part of the movie, the scene that Taylor and I literally had to pause the TV because I was laughing so hard. As you all know, in the first film, they go to get new brooms and all they can find is a broom, a mop, and a Mary has a vacuum. So in an updated twist on this for this film, they find a broom, a Swiffer for Sarah, and then Mary has 2 Roombas strapped to her feet. It's so funny, y'all. I was not okay. I was cry laughing. And the continuation of the use of the Roombas throughout the movie and then how they come into play later, sweeping up the salt that's imprisoning the witches. So funny, really clever, because again, it didn't feel like they just made that joke to make it. They actually used it as a plot point and it comes back around later in a really smart, funny way. I loved the Roomba use. I thought that was just brilliant and funny and a really cool way to modernize that plot point. It was just so good. One of my original things that I was kind of bummed out about was that I had said to my friends that I wished we had seen either Max's house or Allison's house at some point during the film. But then someone actually pointed out to me that in the Trask for Mayor posters, Max's house is in the back of that. So like I said, I'm sure there's a bunch of things that even I missed the first time around, and I'll have to go back and explore that further. But overall, all those little details and Easter eggs just really played into the nostalgia factor, which I think is what is really, really strong about this movie. And then, of course, I want to talk a little bit about the ending. I loved this ending. I thought it was really beautiful and emotional. And it was cool to see this softer side of the sisters again, like we did in the opening scene. It humanizes them a little bit, gives them a sympathetic angle, which I personally liked because they are lovable characters regardless of the horrible things that they do. You do love them, you like them, and you are rooting for them in a weird way. When I tell you that at the end of this movie I was inconsolable. I could not stop crying. And it wasn't just because of the plot point. It's a beautiful story about how, in the end, Winifred's life wasn't worth living without her sisters. And my friend pointed out to me that in the first movie, Winifred says something to Max about what a fool to give up thine own life for thy sisters. And then in this movie, that's what Winnie does. She gives it all up to be with her sisters, and I thought that was a really beautiful turnaround of Winifred's character. But what also made me really emotional about this ending was like I said, Bette Midler is 77 years old. I grew up with Bette Midler, her movies, her music. She is someone I have looked up to my entire life. In a weird way, this end to this film felt like a beautiful kind of goodbye from her. I don't know how many more big projects she will do in her lifetime, and it just felt like a really beautiful parting, both from the character of Winifred and for Bette from this generation of people who she meant so much to. So that is my very condensed review of Hocus Pocus 2. I could talk for much longer about all kinds of little things that I loved and liked and disliked. But really, at the end of the day, like I said, I think this movie was made with a lot of love and care for the first film. And regardless of whether it was perfect or not, it was really special, especially for those of us who grew up loving this movie and who, I don't know, I think so many of you like me, this movie helped foster my love of Halloween. Hocus Pocus came out in 1993, the year I was born, and my family watched this movie every Halloween night. Every Halloween from the time I was born to when I left home at 18. And I still watch it every Halloween. And so I know that some of my love for this film is just based in nostalgia and comfort from my childhood and my home and my family. But for that reason, it was so cool to be able to see something new for the first time from the world of this film as an adult. And I think it's really cool that it will probably introduce a whole new generation of children to the Sanderson sisters and to Hocus Pocus and make new traditions for new families. And I think that's really special. I really hope that you all enjoyed the movie too. If you did, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you loved about it. Let me know what you didn't like about it. I would love to have a discussion about it in the comments. If you watched this whole video and you haven't seen the movie yet, go watch it. Let us know what you think. I hope you have a really fun time with it like I did. I thought it was a really great way to kick off October, and I feel like Halloween is here because I've already watched Hocus Pocus this year, and so that feels good. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And like I said, don't forget to subscribe to the channel before you leave today if you aren't already. I am really excited to start sharing my home decor with you in the next week or so. So stick around for that. I cannot wait. Thank you all so much for watching today. Again, happy October. I hope you are having a wonderful spooky season so far. And until next time, keep it campy, kooky, glamorous, and spooky. Bye!
When ghosts come out to social